All right, the diet starts tomorrow, but the podcast starts right now. What is up? Welcome to episode 1104, Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, however you choose to consume Talking Buffalo. I really appreciate you. If you are not yet subscribed, if you listen to podcasts, go to Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Just hit that follow button. Of course, if you watch on the video side and you haven't done so already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Like this video. Leave a comment. Maybe you like something I say today. Maybe you hate something I say today. Regardless, let me know what you think. It really helps with that algorithm bullshit and grow the show. So please do that. Big shout out to both our sponsors today. Sunny Reds, 1841 Aber Road, just on the way from my stadium. Summer is kicking. It's like 1,000 degrees right now. You wouldn't know that because here, if you're watching on the video in my studio, got a hoodie on. Shout out Old School Record Theater. But anyway, that patio out there has been the bomb at Sunny Reds. I've been out there so many times. In fact, I will actually be there later tonight. Tonight being Thursday after I wrap up this show. Dollar chicken tenders. Are you kidding me, man? I will be there banging out some of those. Also, a big shout out to our other sponsor, Imperial Pizza, 1655 Main Street, not far from Canisius College. And, of course, the staple location in the heart of South Buffalo, 1035 Aber Road, home of the best lunch special. And I mean that. The best lunch special you're going to get anywhere in town. Imperial Pizza, far and away one of the most popular elite pizza joints in all of Western New York, not just Buffalo. All right, folks, this is going to be a two-part show today. Part one, we'll go over some stuff from day two of Bills training camp. A couple injuries, talk about a couple standouts, a few other things that we'll head on a little bit today, at least anyway. And then part two is going to be, we'll call it a somewhat abbreviated version of the Podbag. You know I love these because they're interactive. I take some of your questions, your comments, your takes. I read them on the air, and I respond. So kind of like we'll mash these two up today, and then a couple of the Bills-related questions. They're kind of in conjunction with Bills training camp. We'll get to that in just a second. Before, real quick though, man, I would be remiss being a mid-50s something lifelong, and I do mean that, lifelong professional wrestling fan if I didn't acknowledge anyway the death. Hulk Hogan passes away, I believe, 71 years old here on Thursday. I'm not going to sit here in a big, long diatribe, but quickly, and I'll say this, man, when I'm on this show, when I'm behind this microphone, when you're tuned in, I do my best to be honest and objective in how I feel. Sometimes it might be a little over emotional. Some of you might consider it an irrational opinion. Certainly agree, some disagree, whatever it may be. But I kind of, for the most part anyway, I don't hold back. If I got something to say, I'm going to say it. And when it comes to somebody like Hulk Hogan, because he was just such a big part of my childhood in terms of becoming a wrestling fan and taking my wrestling fandom to a level that I didn't know it would ever get to. Riding my bike from the west side to North Buffalo once every month, saving up all my allowance, begging my parents for money so I could buy up every single wrestling magazine that I could possibly get my hands on. And of course, Hulk Hogan was on many of those covers because he was the icon. He was the star. He took wrestling and brought it to global heights that it had never seen before. That needs to be acknowledged. And it's hard sometimes for me. Maybe it is for you, maybe it's not, but trying to separate the art from the artist. There's so many talented, iconic figures in the world of entertainment, and maybe just life, that accomplish so much, but they're also huge pieces of shit in real life. I'm not going to go through all of them. We can literally do an entire podcast on that, but you know some of the people on the list. R. Kelly. I love R. Kelly's music. I can't not listen to an R. Kelly song if it's on the radio or on my Spotify because he's one of my favorite R&B artists of all time. But I also know what a horrible human he is. Michael Jackson, if you're watching right now, you know what? Let me pull it up here on the video side so you can even see it in have never noticed this because it's been up there for a while. If you look behind me, Michael Jackson's Thriller album cover is literally part of my studio setup, literally here. But I know in real life, what he was accused of, not so open and cut, or open and shut like with some other stuff. But, you know Michael's story. I don't need to get into it. Bill Cosby, I can just, listen, man, I can keep going on and on and on forever. You know what I'm talking about. Trying to separate the art from the artist. Vince McMahon, and you're starting to, as I'm recording this on Thursday afternoon, I should point out, starting to see some tributes or statements pouring in from people. I saw WWE had a statement, Triple H. Vince McMahon had a pretty profound statement, and I was waiting to see what he said. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but one line he had in his statement was that he said the world lost a treasure today. And I'm just going to say this. I'm being honest with you. My opinion, I disagree. The wrestling world lost a treasure today. The wrestling world lost an icon. The wrestling world lost one of its most iconic figures in the entire history of the business. WWE probably, almost certainly, never gets to where it's at today were it not for Hulk Hogan. That's undeniable. The wrestling world absolutely lost a treasure. But the real world, in my opinion, the real world itself, they lost a racist, pathological, lying piece of shit, man. I mean, let's just say what it is. How you choose to remember Hulk Hogan, you want to celebrate him, that's your right. And I promise you, man, I'm not going to judge that. I'm not going to judge you if you're blasting Real American, which I can't lie. That's the bomb. I love that song. If you're blasting Real American today, if you've got Hulk Hogan colors and or his merch, you're walking around internet, you're hugging his new All-American beer, all that stuff. If you're watching wrestling tapes from the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, and you're paying homage and you're celebrating Hulk Hogan, that's cool. I got no issue with any of that. I'm not going to judge you. And I'm seeing plenty of it on Twitter and especially on Facebook. A lot of my friends, huge Hulk Hogan fans. I'm with that. I understand. I just personally, I'm not going to let his passing away absolve him from some of the horrible shit that he has said repeatedly. His shit caught multiple times, man. The things that he has said and the things that he has done in both his professional career and in real life. But that's just me, man. That's just me. You do you. It sucks that he dies. For the people who loved him, that's terrible. I wouldn't wish that pain on anybody. But I'm not going to celebrate Hulk Hogan, Terry Bollea like he's some kind of hero. He's not. He was a wrestling icon, a pretty terrible person with some of the things that he has said and done in his life. That said, rest in peace. Celebrate him how you want. I'll say this. 3 in a week now, man. Whew. A big part of my childhood. If you grew up in the 80s, like I did, man, Malcolm Jamal Warner, Ozzy Osbourne just yesterday, and now Hulk Hogan, man. It is a tough week if you grew up in the 80s. That's for damn sure. And I'll say this, man. So, celebrity deaths are usually like somebody dies, a celebrity. You're like, oh, that sucks, man. I like that guy's music. I loved him in this movie or this and that or whatever. He was a great athlete. It's like it sucks. But life just, carries on seamlessly. Life goes on. But I'll tell you this, 3 in a week, kind of, feels like a message to like my generation that, hey, man, we're getting old. And just appreciate shit while you can. So that's my takeaway from all these, terrible deaths that have happened this week, man. Really sucks. And I could have said, just Ozzy alone would have been a big blow. Jamal, Malcolm Warner alone would have been a big blow. I mean, he was a central figure, a teenage boy. When I was a teenage boy, on one of the most iconic TV shows that has ever been put on TV. This week just sucks when it comes to celebrity deaths. Not to mention my guy, Chuck Mangione with the horn. Love that song. I forgot what it's called. Feeling Good. Still like playing that shit to this day. Anyway, I've been blabbing for long enough. Let's get into today's show itself. And we'll start, like I said, with some Thursday practice stuff. Not going to deep dive. Certainly not as much like I did yesterday. To me, the most notable thing in any training camp practice is if there's an injury. And as we're recording this, to report of. One of them, H.A. Epinesa, left practice early. As of this recording, don't know what happened. Don't know the extent. I have not found any of that out yet. And then the other one, which I obviously don't like, but Dorian Williams. Dorian Williams left the field with a limp, a profound limp, did not return. Sal Capaccio pointed out that he saw him exit the locker room to go up to the dorms, and when he did, his lower right leg wrapped. It certainly seems and feels like that it's something calf-related. Pretty noticeable limp, but Sal did point out that he was walking up the stairs on his own. And like I said, in terms of A.J. Epinesa, we'll wait and see. Hopefully they're both minor. In terms of A.J. Epinesa, the silver lining in that is maybe Landon Jackson could start to get some more work and the Bills could get a little bit of a vibe, feel he can do. Dorian Williams, even though he's not a starter, he's an important player on this team. First of all, he plays behind Matt Milano, who, unfortunately could go down at any time. But even more so than that, he's a good special teams player, and he's good enough. The Bills have seen enough for him that I expect to see the team play more 4-3 football this year than they have in the last few years. Because unlike when Balen Spector's the third linebacker or somebody like that, you got Dorian Williams along with Milano and Bernard that you could trust. So we'll see how that plays out. Something certainly worth following. As for practice, a standout from day 2 by all accounts. And also, let me say this too, before we get cooking here. I will be in Rochester for sure Friday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, for sure. Almost certainly Thursday as well. So I plan on being at the next 5 Bills practices to be able to have firsthand accounts. I'm going to Rochester on Sunday morning, and I'm actually going to be staying in a hotel for a couple days. You don't have to go back and forth 3 consecutive days. So plenty coming firsthand accounts from me. As for today, I should say, kind of relying on secondhand accounts, like I said yesterday, in a group text with a handful of people who are at practice, comparing notes, watching some videos. Some of them you've seen on Twitter publicly, some of them not public. Talked to a couple of reporters. But anyway, a consensus standout from day 2 of camp was definitely second-year wide receiver Keon Coleman. Had a very rough first day. Christian Benford was on him a lot on day 1. Matt Perino noted on Wednesday that he was held catch of 5 targets during drills. Much better on day 2. Saw some film from it, or some tape, I should say. Getting open, stretching the field some, making plays in the middle of the field, not just the short stuff, some intermediate stuff as well. Looks crispy, was catching everything. He beat Dane Jackson a few times, 2 of the plays I saw myself. So it was a really good bounce-back day for Keon Coleman. I'll tell you this, and this is how I feel about him right now. For Keon Coleman to be a valuable asset to the Bills, it's all about consistency. Like, day 1, not good. Couldn't get open. Couldn't separate. Day 2, does get open. Or if he's not open, he's making the catch anyway, using his physicality, his body, his deceptive speed in certain areas of the football field. Can he do that consistently? That's what's going to make him a legitimately good NFL receiver. I think back to camp 2 years ago, and it's only 2 days into this year's camp, so let's be clear. There's no reason why Keon Coleman can't string together 4 or 5 great days in a row. But I think back to Kyrie Elam 2 years ago at camp. No, it was last year, actually. It was just a year ago. This time last year, he looked sensational one day. Then he looked like garbage the next. It was so maddening. It's like there was no consistency. He never got the trust of Sean McDermott, and the results ultimately spoke for themselves. I'm hopeful that Keon Coleman can demonstrate consistency, because if he can look consistently like he does on day 2 of Bills camp, and I'd also like to see it against, Christian Benford more, or Trey White, or Max Saracen as opposed to, say, Dane Jackson or some of the other guys. But this is a big development for the Bills because they don't have that type of receiver that Keon Coleman potentially could be. That receiver that we saw in Seattle against the Seahawks last season or against Tennessee at home, that was a man's man. I've said it. It was just an alpha those games. Other games, disappears. So we'll see if he could string together some practices. But by and large, from what I've heard, the highlight of day 2 was definitely Keon Coleman looking the part, looking really good. I also think a significant development from day 2 of camp, and it's not, unlike Keon Coleman, it's not what he did or didn't do, it's where he was. And that's fellow sophomore second-year guy, Cole Bishop. Cole Bishop started with the ones again, and he got nearly all the first-team reps second straight day. The optimist in me tells me that the Cole Bishop versus Damar Hamlin battle, the competition, the street fight, if you talk about Hulk Hogan today, you want to use a wrestling term here, that it doesn't look like that's going to materialize. And that makes me happy. I fully expected, and I've talked about it on this show and other shows that I've been a guest on for weeks now, I fully expected this year's trip to be much like last year's was supposed to be, where it's Cole Bishop, it's Damar Hamlin, it's Derek Forrest. And there's going to be, let's use another wrestling term here, a triple threat match to see who the starter was. And I figured, all right, well, Bishop will go with the ones on day 1. Then Hamlin will go with the 2s on day 2. And then Forrest will go with the ones on day 3. And then maybe Bobby Babbage and his staff meet and, kind of come up with a plan going forward. But it's been Cole Bishop with the ones both days. I like that. I like that because Damar Hamlin is who he is. There's not really anything left in the imagination when it comes to Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin is a serviceable, somewhat reliable, fundamentally sound, will make the play that's in front of him. If you make a mistake and he has an opportunity to get a turnover, he will take advantage. He did it last year. But he is incredibly, and I'm not saying anything you don't know, folks, he is incredibly limited athletically. That's who Damar Hamlin is. That's who he was last year. That's who he's going to be this year. And that's what he'll be 3 or 4 years from now. You could do a hell of a lot worse than having Damar Hamlin on your football team. He is a rosterable, serviceable, and if need be, starter, fine. But not the guy that day 1 or day 2 of training camp that you want to be your starting free safety. You want to feel like you can reach higher and do better. Now with Cole Bishop, there is a lower floor, I should say, with Cole Bishop. I don't think Damar Hamlin, other than in the lack of athleticism, would ever be a crap safety. Cole Bishop could be a mistake-prone, mental mistake-prone, physically mistake-prone safety starter for all we know in this league. So his floor could be lower. Maybe, again, lower than Damar. But there's great possibilities with Cole Bishop to imagine. And I want to find that out. I guess that's what I'm saying. I want to find that out. Cole Bishop is far more gifted athletically than Damar Hamlin. Cole Bishop, if it kicks in, if he gets it, he could be a tremendous playmaking asset, on the team. Other opponents, their mistakes don't have to fall. They don't have to fall into Cole Bishop's lap to make a play. He can just go out and make a play. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think 100% that it's a pretty significant development that Cole Bishop started with the ones again and got most of the reps again as well. Let's do this. We're going to take a real quick break. Then I'm going to fly through a couple more points from day 2 camp, and then we're going to fly through a couple really good Podbag questions. So be right back in a second. All right, back here talking about day 2 of Bills camp. A few other standouts from what I heard on day 2 included wide receiver Curtis Samuel, who's kind of become a forgotten man, I feel like, after, an injury-filled, mostly, call it what it is, lousy 2024, certainly an uneventful season for him. Alex Brasky, we just had on the show a couple days ago. He's doing a really good job at camp, by the way, pointing out everything. Undrafted edge rusher, who I barely even heard of, if I'm being honest with you. Paris Shan, he said he's looked really good early, so he was a standout again. Obligatory warning, especially for defensive linemen and offensive linemen, there ain't no pads yet. So I am not going to put in stock, who beat somebody in a jersey and shorts right now. Put the pads on and I'll care. But still, it is worth noting a guy that probably most of you never heard of, Paris Shan, has looked good, and that's per Alex Brasky. Mike White, by the way, that's another kind of development. He got QB2 snaps ahead of Mitch Trubisky, so that's looking like a legit quarterback 2 competition, which is something that I think most, if not all of us, expected. He's trying to win that QB2 job, and from what I've seen and heard, he had some really nice throws on Thursday. One other thing, too. Load management is definitely underway now for edge rusher Joey Bosa. Matt Perino reported that he didn't see him in any individual or team drills, only in individual stuff, mainly doing that stuff on the sidelines. Now, he was running around. He was fine, not hurt. This feels like, again, a management plan for Bosa. And that's cool. Like, what do you need to see from Joey Bosa that you don't already know? It's about one thing and one thing only with Joey Bosa, and that's just him staying healthy. And the fresher he is going into the season, the better. I talked about it on the show yesterday a little bit. I did find it refreshing and pretty cool that he seemed genuinely happy, content, and comfortable to be in Buffalo. Talked about playing with guys that want to win, and he could feel that. And it didn't just feel like, standard get on a mic in front of the media and say the vanilla bland bullshit. I felt the sense of authenticity with what Joey Bosa was saying yesterday. And today, again, load management. If that dude goes into week 1, 100% fully ready to go, that's going to be a big, big deal, potentially anyway, for the Buffalo Bills. All right, let's dive into this pod bag. I just got a couple Bills ones and a couple Sabres. Like I said, a Friday show. I don't want this to go very, very long. Lance, not from France, 1. That's a good name. I know not to overreact to training camp, and especially when there are no pads. But what's a few things early on that they don't got you excited, at least have you feeling very optimistic? I got 2 for you here, buddy. And that's a good question, and it's a fair question, and it's early in camp, but even just through 2 days, the things that I'm seeing or hearing that have me pretty excited, I got 2. One of them is Matt Milano. No brace on his arm, no brace on his elbow, I should say, no brace on his knee. I love that. And everything that I've heard, everything I see is that he is flying around and looking the part. He's looking really well so far. There's like no lingering effects from the knee, from the elbow. And again, non-contact now, I get that. But so far, so good. Day 2 of camp, Sal Capaccio pointed out how he would have had a really beautiful tackle for a loss on a running play. I saw one play where Elijah Moore kind of caught the ball on a short pass and the turn up field, Milano had chased him down. So there's that. Look, the Bills defense last year was really good, but it was really good because of the takeaways. That they were elite at taking the ball away. And that matters, obviously, a ton. Maybe more than anything else. But aside from that, defense, not so much, man. They couldn't get off the field. They didn't make enough stops. You know where I'm going with this, man. A healthy Matt Milano from week 1, playing at even close to the level he was at just a few years ago. It cannot be overstated how significant and how important that would be to the Buffalo Bills, to that defense, to have, man, if you got 90, I would say last year, even as he got better, and you could see him getting better as, late in the season and into the playoffs. But I would say last year he was 75 to 80% what he was pre-injury. If he had 90% of what he was going back to 2022 pre-injury, boy, what a boost that would be for a defense. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who can, get out to the flat and make a big third down tackle and force a punt, or a guy who could break up a pass, or a guy who's going to get after a quarterback for a big third down sack, or whatever. You name it. You know where I'm going with this. Matt Milano's that guy, man. He is one of the true playmakers on this Buffalo Bills football team. So for him to be healthy and looking really good right now, that definitely excites me. The other thing I'll say is James Cook. I'm really excited about that. Him being at camp, and we talked about this plenty yesterday, so I'm not going to go into the whole offseason, content, and is he going to be there, is he not going to be, all that stuff. But I'll say, man, James Cook, him being at camp, him participating fully, no hold-in, him really, really on the field too, man, that is such an important sign. And by the way, he spoke to the media after practice on Thursday. Why do you want to be here? Quarterback. Fan base. Wants to win. Don't want to let his teammates down. That's why he's at practice. All that stuff while still saying he wants to get his money. But he's not being detrimental to the team about it. And that's why I'm excited. He's out there. He's not mailing it in. He looks really good so far. That's an important sign. It seems that James Cook got the message, whether it was his agent, whether it was his family, his friends, himself, a combination of all that stuff, that the only way to get that big money contract that he desperately wants and probably deserves, and he certainly will with another good year, is by going out and just playing great. So Matt Milano has me excited, and James Cook so far definitely had me excited. Which kind of leads into another question from Todd, who emailed and basically said that nothing at camp should excite you, and nothing at camp means anything other than injuries. And I'm going to respond to that quickly here by refuting it. And I'll refute it directly with a specific example. And it's not something we'll be able to tell before the pads go on. And they're coming on in a couple days, okay? But if you're looking to sink your teeth into something at camp that matters going into the regular season, let's circle back to James Cook right now. Let's see how James Cook handles pass blocking drills at camp this year. Let's see how he looks with pass blocking. Because if you want James Cook to be out there, and James Cook talked about wanting to be a third down back in the passing, more involved in the passing game. He talked about that with the media today. If you want James Cook to be out there for more than 45 to 48% of the Bills' offensive snaps, he's got to be better at pass blocking. He has to be. Simple as that. Now, he wasn't even put in a lot of pass blocking situations last year and have a lot of opportunities because he's not good at it, and the Bills would take him off the field. Simple as that. If he shows him that he could be a willing and competent or better pass blocker, he'll be out there more. It's literally as simple as that. So if you're looking for something at camp that does mean something, there you go. That's just one thing anyway. At Jazz Unlimited 1 said, I agree with Bruce Smith being the best Bill of all time. However, I disagree with Josh Allen being QB2 in Bill's history. He's already at Kelly's total keys and has a lot more talent than he had. If he had Kelly's roster, he would have won multiple Super Bowls, whether it was the 90s or in today's era. I also understand it's a completely different era, but Josh Allen led the most prolific offense the Bills have ever seen in franchise history, with Shakir and Cook being his top weapons. So, Josh Allen is the second best player in Bills history, in my opinion. All right, thank you, Jazz, a regular viewer to the show on YouTube and a frequent commenter. I appreciate you. Well, one thing I immediately disagree about is you insinuating that if he had Kelly's roster, he would have won multiple Super Bowls in the 90s. And maybe I'm taking that the wrong way, because to me that makes it sound like you're saying the Bills didn't win Super Bowls because of the quarterback. No. The Bills didn't win any Super Bowls because The first one, the defense couldn't get the Giants off the field. They had the ball for 40 minutes. Josh Allen would have only had the ball 20 minutes in that game. The next two, they just weren't the better team. The third, or I should say the last one, the Bills were up at halftime. They make a mistake early in the third quarter. The Thurman fumble, return for a touchdown, and the wheels were off. In here we go again kind of mentality. So that part I don't agree with. I'll say this. You have a case. You definitely have a case. But I personally, maybe this is just me at this point, I look at the Bills winning 4 straight AFC titles and win the 4 straight Super Bowls in an era, by the way, where the AFC featured quarterbacks like Dan Marino and John Elway and Warren Moon and Joe Montana, at least for some of it, among other great quarterbacks. The Bills did that 4 straight years. No one's ever been to 4 straight Super Bowls like that. Come on. You got to give Jim credit for that. He deserves that. He was the centerpiece. He was the quarterback on those teams. I'm not denying Josh's test versus Jim Kelly or versus anyone for that matter. Josh Allen may be as physically gifted as any quarterback who's ever played. And he's putting it all together, too. I mean, he was literally the MVP last season, and it could have been an MVP before last season, too. He's been sensational. Like, literally, the reigning MVP. And his skill set, no, Jim Kelly couldn't run the football. Not like Josh. Hell no. So, I understand that. I just want to see Josh Allen do it for a little bit better. Just a little bit longer. It may only be 1 year. 1 year from now, I may be convinced fully, and this might not even be a debate anymore. But I got to put a little more emphasis on team accomplishments, I feel like, with the quarterback, too, than you are, and a lot of other people. And let's also not forget how different offenses are now as well. I was looking up stats. 11 quarterbacks this past season threw for at least 3,800 yards. Jim Kelly only did that once. John Elway, who is regarded by almost everybody as a top 5 quarterback ever, he only did it 3 times. So it's a close and it's a fun debate. And by the way, if you didn't know, this is stemming back from Joe Marino a week or so ago having a Mount Rushmore of Buffalo Bills players, and it kind of just led to a lot of debate. Controversy, I guess, in some cases, just debate in others. Again, it's close, it's fun. I don't think there's a definitive right or wrong. If you tell me Josh is already better than Jim Kelly, you got a great case. If I tell you Jim Kelly is still, for the time being, the greatest quarterback in Bills history, I think anyway, that at least I still have a case. Which, unlike, the whole preface or the premise of it was that set this all off last week, is my guy Aaron Quinn and a few others, Aaron shout out cover 1, but trying to tell me that Josh Allen's already the greatest Bill ever and not Bruce Smith. That is ridiculous. Bruce Smith's the best ever. That's not debatable. But Josh, sure. Josh, Jimmy, definitely debatable. At LeeB_P1H. Thurman Thomas was great, but OJ was one of the greatest running backs ever. If OJ in his prime played with the Eagles last year, he would have had 2,600 yards. All right, again, this is going to Joe from Queens was on a few weeks ago, and we did a Bills all-time 53-man roster. And we had Thurman Thomas as our starting running back over OJ, not because I thought OJ wasn't better than Thurman, but because this was going to be a pass-happy offense. Thurman, a better all-around back than OJ Simpson. I think most people would agree with that. So that's why he was my starter. But yeah, look, a lot of people, they know OJ because he's a murderer. But the football player itself, OJ Simpson's last great year with the Bills was 1976, all right? That's 49 years ago. You know what that means? That means if you truly got into football when you were like 9 or 10 years old, you'd have to be at least in your late 50s or early 60s to even remember him playing, which I'm old, and that counts me out. So we see highlights, and we see highlights in a non-modern era. So that's it. Yes. While he was a huge, you want to talk about pieces of shit, we were talking about Hogan earlier, OJ's the ultimate piece of shit, all right? But I can't see how people don't consider OJ Simpson the greatest Bills running back of all time. Dude averaged 4.8 yards per carry over 9 years on a team that could not throw the football worth shit. And He averaged like over 100 yards rushing per game over the course of a season 3 times, man. He was a 5-time first-team PL Pro. To me, there's not really any debate. 2 quick Sabre ones here to finish up. At What You Are Thinking One says, Paterka pulled a Myles Garrett. It was all about being paid. Nah. Myles Garrett was about getting paid at the end of the day. I agree with you about that. And J.J. Paterka wanted a new contract, but I don't. It wasn't money. Not with the Sabres. Myles Garrett with Cleveland was about him getting his bank. J.J. Paterka just straight the hell up did not want to be a Buffalo Sabre. That's it. He hated being a Buffalo Sabre. His reputation, a really good offensive player, but a guy who was not completely bought in, a guy who had some growing up and maturity issues off the ice. You know, kind of know about the party scene with J.J. Paterka. That's not the same to me. J.J. Paterka got a contract with Utah. If he would have got that same contract with the Sabres and even a little bit more, I guarantee you, I shouldn't say guarantee, but I'd be willing to bet that J.J. Paterka still would not have signed it if he knew that he'd be able to force his way out. So when it comes to that specific comparison, I don't buy it. If Myles Garrett refused to sign with Cleveland for any money, then I think the comparison would be there. But in this case, nah. Last one here. At Aura Jeffries. Kesselring and Doan are so much better than having Paterka. It's wild. It's amazing all these pundits love Paterka, who's barely a 50% WAR left wing with no power play ability and no translatable playoff talent. I'd love to have anyone on the Sabres right now who played great in the regular season and then fell on their face in the playoffs. For obvious reasons, because that means the Sabres would be in the playoffs. Look, it's not a bad trade. And the more hockey people that I talk to, the better the trade sounds. Kesselring and Doan both certainly have value. Kesselring is a pretty solid top 4 defenseman. And maybe besides just being a good presence himself on the ice, he may be that key that unlocks the full potential of Owen Power with him. That happens, boy, that's a good blue line. That's a good deal, ain't it? And Shane Doan, work ethic, maturity. I had a really good off-camera conversation last week about Shane Doan with Matthew Fairburn, who was on with me live at Imperial Pizza. And he couldn't say enough good things about him. He's talked to hockey people, and he was just telling me about how many awesome things he heard about Doan. Now, he's not going to be a great scorer, but he is your guy that you want on the bottom 6. He's going to bring a lot to that locker room, a really good attitude. And again, he had the issue with Paterka is he don't play defense and he didn't have the best attitude. So culture-wise, the locker room got better. Potentially on the ice, maybe so. But, it's replacing Paterka's scoring. That's the problem. I don't think many Sabre fans at all have an issue with J.J. Paterka being traded. And I don't think a lot of fans have an issue with what they got back for him. I think a lot of fans have an issue with the fact that they traded J.J. Paterka, got a bottom 6 guy and a top 4 defenseman, but they didn't do anything to replace his offense. So for that reason, it's mostly a lateral move on a team that's just straight up not good enough to have what's going to amount to, almost certainly anyway, their biggest move of the offseason is going to turn out to be a lateral move. So that's all I'm going to say for today. I'll leave it at that. When Bill's camp slows down a little bit, we'll get back to having some hockey guests on, and we'll dive into topics like that. But for now, I'm going to leave that in the pod bag there. A big Bills week coming up next week. Again, I'll be at camp Friday, for sure, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. I'm going to have firsthand accounts from camp. Pads will be on at some point. I know that as well. So some of the drills, especially front in the trenches, we'll see some more meaningful stuff. Thursday, I'm going to be at camp, and then I'm coming right back to Buffalo, and it's going to be a big one, folks. Sunny Reds next Thursday, and by next Thursday, I mean July 31st. Joe Marino who will be in Rochester for camp all week long, and Jeremy White from WGR. Those guys are both going to join me. Sunny Reds, Thursday night, July 31st. Showtime, 8 p.m. Those guys will be there well before that. So if you want to come up, you want to say hello to them, you want to buy them a drink, get up there. Wing night, too. Or no, actually, it's chicken tender night there. Get some wings as well. But Sunny Reds next Thursday, Joe Marino, Jeremy White. All right, folks, it's going to do it. Have a good weekend. I'll be back with a new show on Monday. Live accounts of Bills camp. Probably with a guest with me, potentially live too, coming from Rochester. Talk to you then.